Now that Pokémon Scarlet and Violet has come to an end with the recent epilogue, it's interesting to take a look back at all the aspects of these video games. Some of the most different in the Pokémon series with its open world concept, new features, and apparent lack of villains in the story. Obviously, a game doesn't need a true villain in order to be good, but from what we've seen in the past, it's funny that there isn't a definitive character or group of characters people would agree as the villain of the story. So I want to take a look back at what we were presented with anyway. First of all, we do have a regional antagonist group in the form of Team Star. Of course, near the end of their storyline, we discover that they weren't an evil team in the traditional sense, more so a bunch of misunderstood students who organized and took things a little too far, with Penny being the not-so-secret mastermind behind its creation and later destruction. Even if these weren't the typical villains in the sense of Pokemon, they were still antagonists and challenges that needed to be overcome. Honestly, in a way, they were basically extra gym leaders in the region, as the higher-up members had their own type specialties and defeating them was necessary to complete the game. In that sense, I like what they did with them, because they took the concept of an evil team not really being evil and made it better than their previous attempt with Team Yell. Really though, they tie into the overall theme of the game, which is finding your own treasure. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before diving into the characters that I would really classify as closer ones to villains. At least that's what a lot of fans speculated based on trailers and promotional images leading up to the release of the base game and its accompanying DLC. Those being Professor Sada or Turo, Kieran, and Briar. With them being the most involved in the heavy plot related moments, I want to further discuss them, because they all actually fit into a theme that comes full circle in the end. For the main part of the story, we had the Professor, or at least the AI replicant of the Professor. I've already discussed them before and gone on about how much I love them because they themselves weren't necessarily the villain, but the Paradise Protection Protocol itself was what served as the one standing in our way. A soulless program executed as a contingency plan created by the original Professor who had since died. Again, we're not talking about the AI Professor because I love them, but here we see a lot of the issues and problems we as the main character had to solve were caused by the human Professor, despite the fact that they are no longer around. It was all because of their ambitions and unwillingness to yield that sure, some good things happened, like bringing the legendary Pokemon to the present timeline, allowing it to become our friend, but in the long run their actions could have potentially doomed the entire Paldea region, leaving a time machine on, bringing in countless other Pokemon that just did not belong. Oh yeah, and of course they neglected their child, Arven. It's a tale of a person's ambitions becoming the sole focus of their life that they lose what was really important to them. The human Professor does selflessly give up their own life in order to defend the legendary Pokemon, but again it was due to circumstances all caused by their own actions. Meanwhile, in the main story beforehand, the idea of the treasure hunt as an extracurricular activity basically boils down to, maybe the real treasure was the friends we made along the way. A bit cliche, but that is literally the theme of the entire game. So then the villains, or more appropriately the antagonists, are the characters who fail to recognize that. They lose themselves, their personalities, the ones closest to them, and in extreme cases their own lives, because they were selfishly pursuing a physical goal all on their own. With the Professor, this is literally represented in how they created an exact copy of themselves to help with their research. Anyway, now that this has been established, I think you might be able to see how this leads into the characters we meet in the DLC. After traveling to Kitakami for a school trip, we meet Carmine and her younger brother Kieran, who becomes our friend over the course of the field trip assignments. We learn about the story of Ogerpon and Loyal 3, it's all really cool and that's all on a relatively smaller scale. But the point is, I think you already know the story, I did a video on that as well. The important thing is that it ends with Ogerpon choosing the player character as a friend over Kieran. There were a lot of factors negatively affecting him, it wasn't his own fault entirely, but the one thing to focus on is that he felt entitled to this Pokemon's friendship, and lashed out when he didn't get his way. This leads into his edgy boy arc in the second half of the DLC at the Blueberry Academy, where Kieran has lost himself and basically becomes a different person, climbing the ranks of the Blueberry League and treating his fellow classmates harshly because they can't compare to his own battle prowess. We learn that he's become so interested in battling for the sole purpose of being stronger than the protagonist. So again, we're seeing Kieran losing himself in ambition and driving away the friends and family who really did care about him. He's become obsessed to the point that nothing else matters to him except being better than someone else, which is a pretty selfish goal. Merely defeating him as a champion isn't enough because he keeps the same mentality going into the depths of Area Zero, where he unleashes Terapagos, which transforms and nearly destroys everything. During this big battle against the legendary Pokemon, which honestly had me sweating bullets, we're able to break through to him with the message that he isn't exactly overshadowed by us, and that we do genuinely need his help in this moment. The only way we can save the world is together. It's because we can be friends that we can do great things. It's not about some hidden treasure or being the best trainer or even Ogerpon, it's about our friendship. Again, the whole thing of the real treasure was the friends we made along the way. This entire conflict of Terapagos going berserk was caused by the fact that it was selfishly sought out as some kind of mystical treasure that would solve everything, not just by Kieran, but also Briar. She doesn't get as much as the other two characters I've mentioned, but the point is she endangered these students that have come down to the depths with her, and she pushes Kieran to release Terapagos, all because she's following her own desires to discover whatever secrets there are, not taking a moment to consider the lives of the students or any possible consequences to her own actions. Of course, at the end of the day, friendship prevails overall, but oh my gosh, these people need to chill out for like a moment or two. So that's how I feel everything comes together through the story of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. It's a tale about finding your treasure in the friends who help you on your own journey, and how selfishly pursuing your goals only ends in disaster. It didn't give us any villains in the traditional sense, but it was quite the experience that I thoroughly enjoyed. There are also the Loyal 3 and Pecharunt, which I discussed recently. I definitely classify them as more traditional villains, but I wanted the focus to be on the human characters for now. Before the reveal of their backstory, I was convinced that these were just a bunch of guys who were evil for no reason, attacking people and taking things just because. Though the backstory behind Pecharunt specifically gets a little weird with how it was presented as if it was only doing these things for the old couple who raised it, but still leaves some questions about how much the emoji it created altered their desires. Also, it's a little ambiguous whether Pecharunt is knowingly controlling everyone, but I think it's safe to assume. At the end of the day, it can still fit into the theme because it shows the dangers brought about by greed. I'm just a bit burnt out on Pecharunt after Pokemon played an epic prank on me. It was pretty interesting how in these games the core stories involve some different types of villains. In the Nintendo Switch era of Pokemon, we've still seen some traditional villains, but having a bit of a detour in Scarlet and Violet was a nice change of pace. Though I'm very curious to see what else they can cook up in future games. Again, there was still conflict brought about by characters having different perspectives on a theme, you know, the components that make a story. And with how grand the climaxes were with the legendary Pokemon, I think they pulled off a great adventure. So let me know what you think in the comments about all the characters brought up today. Anyway, I better go call my friends and tell them how much I appreciate them, lest we accidentally start some villain arcs. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, especially the great Gators, Moth Ballard, MathTheClock47, Lockadox, Nomad Nobi, Alex Switz, Cheeseburger Lasers, Pastel Blood, Taijirai, Justin R, Volity, Cosmo Zero, Phantom, and Quago. If you would like to support, see your name here, get access to emotes for comments, live streams, and sometimes early videos, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well for more memes. Anyway, this has been Gatorax, and I'll catch you all later.
Start your adventure together in the Pokemon trading card game Scarlet and Violet. Available now. Products sold separately, cards vary by pack.